Today I'm going to be sharing the first chapter of the Octane module development series. We're going to focus on how to get started with Octane. First of all, Octane is a web application framework, so we should acquaint ourselves with the attributes of what a web application framework offers you. Web application framework is a framework that is designed to accelerate the development of web applications, web services, and web APIs. Web frameworks provide a standard way to build and deploy web applications. Web frameworks aim to automate the overhead associated with common activities performed in web development. The Octane framework is a modular application framework that is built on new technology from Microsoft called Blazor. It is designed to rapidly create modern web applications using less code. The Octane framework is licensed under an open source license. Specifically, it's the MIT license, which is a highly permissive open source license. And Octane provides you with a lot of additional capabilities that are not currently available in Blazor or .NET Core. So what exactly are those capabilities? Well, if we look at this diagram, we can see that Blazor itself at the bottom is built on .NET Core. .NET Core is a cross-platform development framework that runs on both Windows and Linux. On top of Blazor, we have Octane. And some of the features that Octane provides you, which are unique and separate from Blazor itself, are things like multi-tenancy, dynamic routing, a composite user interface capability, modular architecture, granular permissions, customizable themes, a robust admin user interface, as well as a headless API and repository. And we're going to get into the details of what these mean in a moment. First of all, let's talk a little bit about what I mean by a modular framework. On the left-hand side, you will see a typical model for accelerating web development using what is referred to as either a template or a boilerplate application. In that model, you build your application on top of the template or boilerplate, and it does allow you to move ahead very quickly with your application. However, what tends to happen is your application code becomes co-mingled with the template or boilerplate code, and it makes it very difficult for you to upgrade or move forward. You can contrast that to the model that's on the right, where you have a modular framework, which allows you to build modules which plug into it. And there's a clear separation in terms of architecture between your application, which are the modules, and the underlying framework. The benefit of this approach is it allows you to replace or upgrade the underlying framework independently from your application, which provides you a lot of capabilities and freedom in the future. Another thing to keep in mind is when we talk about a modular application framework, it's really important to understand the benefit of modules. Again, on the left-hand side, we have a typical modern application where we might have some microservices that are on the back end, and then we have a monolithic front end. So an application which basically brings all the data together in one consistent user interface. However, the problem with this model is that the entire monolithic front end is constantly under development, and it's really easy to step on each other's toes in such a development model. You can compare that to the right-hand side, where again you have your microservices, but you've broken out the front end of your application into individual distinct modules, which can be developed and deployed independently from one another. Clearly, this is a much better model for software development because it keeps the code much more cleanly separated from one another and keeps the responsibility of concerns much more clean. When we think about Octane as a web application framework, we do have to keep in mind that it is a modern framework using a single page application model. In a single page application model, basically you're using a client server model. So this diagram basically shows how a typical page is constructed in the life cycle of a single page application. So basically your client, which could be a web browser, sends an initial request to the server responds with HTML, CSS, JavaScript to basically create the first page. But from that point forward, a lot of the logic is actually being executed on the client. And it's sending AJAX calls back to the server, which responds with JSON. So this is the data which is driving your application. So instead of sending the entire page payload on every request, it's getting the exact data that you need at the time that the user requests it, which is a much more efficient model. Obviously, though, when you're building an application that's client-server, you do have to think about the architecture a bit more carefully, and you have to separate your concerns more clearly. And I'm going to explain that to you in a moment. The composite user interface capability of Octane basically allows you to modify the look and feel of the application and customize it to meet your needs. Um, at the highest level, you have this concept of what we refer to as a page. A page is actually not a physical page like it is in traditional Microsoft web development, but it's a virtual page. It's basically a container that allows you to define what goes inside of that container. A page can have a theme that's associated to it. The theme provides you with the look and feel of the page. And a theme can contain a number of different content regions called panes. So you could have a left pane and a right pane. You could have as many panes as you desire within the theme. And at runtime, what happens is you can insert modules into those panes, which allows you to composite the page at runtime rather than, which all occurs dynamically rather than statically, which is what typically happens in a web application. And the benefit to this is you can create as many virtual pages as you desire, each of them with their own unique themes and their own content layouts. And you can manage all of that using configuration rather than modifying actual code. And this is obviously a much preferable way of doing web development. Getting now to the community and the code. If you want to learn more about Octane, of course, you can visit the website at octane.org. If you want to go and see the source code, I would encourage you to go to the GitHub repo, which is at github.com/octane/Octane framework. And the other thing I'm going to be focusing on in these series of development workshops is a sample project called the DNF.projects module. It exemplifies a lot of the key capabilities that Octane possesses, and it's a great example that you can look at for building your own modules. And with that, I'm going to shift over to the code now to show you a bit more high-level information about how to get started with Octane. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the actual GitHub repo, and this is where the code exists. You can choose to get the code directly from the repo, get the latest version, or you can actually choose to download a latest release. If you go into the releases area, you can see that we've got release 101, which is the most recent official release. And you can download that if you desire. You can actually get access to the older versions as well. So version 1 is here, and of course there'll be more and newer versions as time goes on. So I've gone ahead and I've downloaded this. So it's pretty easy to get started, and there is instructions on the GitHub repo page. So for getting started, of course, you need to install .NET Core 3.1. And we recommend that you use the Visual Studio 2019 Preview Edition, version 16.6 or higher. And it provides links on how to get access to that. You get the code, and then you simply just open the solution file. So I've got that here. So here's the Octane solution, open in Visual Studio 2019. And actually, I am using Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition, and it works just fine. So you can use the lowest free version of Visual Studio to work with Octane. So getting started, first off, I'm going to show you that there is a number of different projects that are part of Octane. There's a client project, a server project, and a shared project. There's also a test project and an upgrade project. And I'm going to explain all of these. But first off, let's go into the server project. So if I open the server project and I go down and I see the app settings.json file. This is the configuration for the overall application, and it's very helpful to understand what options are available here. So if I open that, I can see that I have a few different settings here. I've already installed the application previously, so I have a default connection. Normally, this would be blank, and when I run the application, it's going to show an installation wizard and allow me to enter some configuration, and it's going to create a connection string for me. And the easiest way to do a reinstall, in fact, of Octane is to actually just remove this connection string. So if I remove this connection string and save it, and I launch the application, it's going to show the install wizard, which is exactly what I want to do. Another key aspect that I want to point out here is you can add a configuration option for runtime. Normally, this option is not even present by default. Um, and when it's not present, it means that you're going to run Octane on Blazor server. Um, if you want to be more explicit about that, you can actually add the node to your app settings.json file and just put runtime server. And that means it's going to run on the Blazor server hosting infrastructure. If you want to run on WebAssembly, you simply change this node from runtime and say WebAssembly. Oops, spelling mistake. All right, and you'd save that and basically rerun the application, and then you can run Octane on WebAssembly. It's as simple as that for running Octane on the two different hosting models. For today, I'm going to keep it on the server model, save that, and I'm going to install the application. So I'm going to hit run. I just chose the default, which is IS Express. It's going to fire up my favorite browser, which is Firefox Developer Edition. And it's going to show my installation wizard. By default, it uses a local DB, which is a local version of SQL Server. And I'm just going to accept the defaults here. It came up with a unique database name for me already. It's going to use integrated security. This is all good for development purposes. The host username is required, and I'm just going to create a password for this account. And I'm going to put in an email address. Doesn't really matter in this case because I'm just doing local development. And I'm going to say install now. All right, so I clicked install now, and it's now executing all of the installation logic that's required to get Octane up and running. All right, so now it redirected me to my site, and it's fully loaded up and running on Blazor server. And I can verify that by going into the control panel. I can get into the control panel by clicking the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner. I go into the admin dashboard. I have a lot of my administrative options that are available here. I can go into my system info, and I can see that I'm running on the Blazor runtime server. If I was running on WebAssembly, it would say WebAssembly here. And it tells me that which version of the .NET CLR I'm running on, which version of Windows I'm running on in this case, and which version of the Octane framework I'm running on. This is all pretty handy information just to do verification of the environment that you're running in. So let's navigate a little bit around the Octane environment. So by default, it creates a few default pages of information for you. So you got a home page, you've got a private page, and you've got a My page as well. In addition to that, you've also got your administrative capabilities, which I've already pointed out, which you can access through this little icon. And you can go to the admin dashboard, and you've got things like site settings, page management, user profile management, role management, a file manager, a recycle bin for information that you delete, the event log to see information that's happened within your site, tenant management. So I'll pause here for a moment. So Octane is a multi-tenant solution, which I already kind of mentioned when I was outlining the features which are unique to Octane earlier. So in tenant management, right now, by default, I only have one tenant. It's my master tenant. If I want to create another tenant, which is unique and separate from this tenant, I would go into my site management area, and I would say I want to add a new site. And in the site, I would give it a name and an alias, and I can choose a default theme. And if I go down, I see tenant here. I can choose that I want to put this site into my master tenant, or I can say I want to create a new tenant. When I say that I want to create a new tenant, basically a tenant is related to a database. So I can have individual databases for each of the sites that are part of my same installation if I so desire. Or I can actually have a single tenant, and I can have a number of different sites that are all part of the same tenant if I want to have a single database. So this is pretty powerful in that you can segment your data however you need to meet the needs of your application. And that is all available through the administrative user interface. So you need to think about tenants as being the actual underlying database that your information is being stored in, and then your sites. So you can have one site per tenant, or you can have many sites per tenant, depending on your needs. Other capabilities here, you've got module management, which gives you a list of all of the different modules which are part of your installation. This includes both the administration modules and other types of modules that you might be using. You also have theme management, where you have a few different themes that come by default, but of course you could create additional themes. You've got a job scheduler, which allows you to manage your background processing of your jobs, which might be running on your site. You've got the ability to interact with your databases directly through a SQL manager. We've already looked at system info, and we've also got a system update capability so that you can update your entire Octane framework seamlessly. So this gives you access to all of the administration functionality. The other thing I wanted to mention is when you're actually interacting with the application itself, you can go into what's known as edit mode if you're authorized to do so for this page. So I can click on the pencil icon, and it shows me the different regions that are part of this. This particular page only has a content pane. And I can see that there's a module instance here at the top. It says, welcome to Octane. I can see there's another module instance with the MIT license. And down below, you can see that there's also another module which is only visible to users that are within a certain security role. If I hover over the caret icon next to the title, I can see my module actions menu. So this allows me to control the data that's part of this particular module instance. So if I can go into the module settings, I can see that this is my secure content module. The container, which is the visual Chrome that is basically displayed around this module, is being inherited. It was being set at the page or the site level. And I can see, I can go into my permissions as well. And I can see in this particular case, only administrators are able to view this particular module and edit it. And registered users are able to view it, but not edit it. And anonymous users are not able to see it at all. So that's how you get your granular permission management for modules. I can also do things like I can move a module up or down within the page. So I took the MIT license module and I moved it up, which of course made the other modules move down. So you can rearrange the content that's on your page to create the composite user interface that you desire. When I went into edit mode in this particular case, I see that there's a button displayed here. So I can click edit, and it allows me to go into an editor where I can see the content of this, this particular module. I can modify it and I can save it. If we go into the editor for this, I can see that it also is capable of displaying my images as well. And I can insert images from my file manager area that I've uploaded previously. So that's how you can manage that type of content. If I go back to my gear icon, I have the ability to manage different aspects of the page. So I can add additional pages, which will be added to the menu. I can edit the current page, or I can delete the current page. It also has convenient ways that I can keep my, my different modules unpublished initially and then publish all of them at one time. And then we get down into the middle section here with module management. So I can add additional modules to my page. So by default, it chooses add new module, common modules, and I'm going to choose my HTML text module. And I'm just going to give it a title of test, and I'm going to add it to the page. And it says module added to page. By default, it added it to the bottom. So I can go down, oh, there's my test module, and I can say I want to move it to the top. There it is. I can edit, so I can go in and I can add some content, save my content, and it's all working. So that's how you can add additional types of content to your page as well. So that's all pretty powerful stuff, and it allows you to do some pretty amazing things. But the focus of this particular module development series is actually how you do module development. So if I go into my private page for a moment, this is by far the easiest way to get started with module development in Octane. So you go into a page, whichever page in your site that you desire, and you create a new page if you want. You go into your control panel, and in module management, you want to say add new module. You want to choose a developer module. That's a special category of module that you want to use for development. And then I would choose my module creator. I'm going to add that to my page now. So if I go ahead and I add that, So it added the module creator module instance to my page where it asked me for some additional information. The owner of the module would be whoever owns the actual code that's going to be developed. It could be an organization, it could be a person, and it asks you to put a name or to add a name and not include any spaces or punctuation in the name. In this case, since I'm focusing on a particular example, I'm going to call it DNF or .NET Foundation. Since I'm actually helping the project committee on the .NET Foundation with some of their needs. The module name, you have to give your module a specific name. It asks you to give it in a singular form and not include any spaces or punctuation. I'm going to call it project. I'm going to give it a description of project as well. And now we have the ability to choose from a few different templates. You have the ability to choose an internal or an external template. Internal template is only useful if you are just getting started with development with Octane. It would actually create your scaffolded module within the Octane project itself. Now this makes it a lot simpler for development and debugging at first if you're just starting or just getting started with Octane. But in a more practical scenario, you would want to choose the external module template. The external template will create a unique module that's independent from the Octane code base itself. And then you can take advantage of all those capabilities I mentioned earlier, where your actual application, which is your module, which is distinct and separate from the Octane framework. And I would go ahead and I would create the module. So I've already gone ahead and done that previously. And so we can see here where I've downloaded the Octane framework previously. So this is the actual source code from the Octane framework. And by using the module creator, it will create a directory at the same level as where the Octane framework is located. So I can see here dnf.projects was created. And it scaffolded a whole set of code for me. It scaffolded the client project, package project, a server project, and a shared project. And it gives me the project files, a solution file, everything that I need to be successful in creating a module for Octane. So if I go ahead and I look at the DNF projects file now, I can see that I've got, again, the client's project. Everything is all wired up like it needs to be. It's included the necessary dependencies. Everything is ready for me, and it included sample components for my module. And that's going to be the topic of the next series in the workshop. But you can see it's got client project, package project, server project, and shared project. So this is like the best way of getting started with creating a new module for Octane. And this is where I'm going to end the first chapter of our module development series. Thank you very much.